Shalom Bethel family. It is Thursday, once again, time to review our Torah talk from Congregation Bethel in Norfolk last week. As you might remember, we've been in the midst of a series connecting our Torah portions to our tefillah, to our prayers, and trying to draw lessons about both from that exploration. This week, of course, I was a little distracted from that because I was thinking a lot about Charlottesville. It was the 1-year anniversary of the violence and the marches in Charlottesville, the racism and the death of Heather Heyer. And so that was, of course, on my mind. And I found myself asking the question, some of the people who were marching there were atheists, or just didn't have to do with God. But some of them, and some racism in general, right? People justify through their religion. And I wonder, when I see that kind of violence and kind of marching with hate in the streets, how someone could read the same Bible, the same text that I read, and even their additions to that text, right? If it's the Christian Bible, and read out of those messages that this is what God wants them to do. And it's not just an academic question to me, because I am a religious person. I try to live my life according to the guidelines God gives me. And how do I know when I'm not getting ahead of that, right? How do I know when I'm not actually completely off the path, as I am quite certain those folks in Charlottesville were? And so I was thinking about that as I was looking at the Parsha, and I found this commentary by Rashi that I think helps answer the question. And it's talking about the first verse in chapter 13 of Devarim. And it says, "Everything I command you, that you shall be careful to do it. You shall neither add to it nor subtract from it." The simple meaning of that is, right, this book, this Torah, is full of mitzvot. Don't add extra mitzvot and don't take away extra mitzvot. The problem is that this is a repeat. Moses already said almost the exact same words in chapter 4, and we take it to mean that there. We don't believe there's any extra words in the Torah, so the commentators need to figure out, why does Moses repeat himself here? Say, this is different. This is when you're doing a mitzvah, not to add elements to it. So, for example, Rashi gives, he says, in your tefillin, which is supposed to have 4 chapters, 4 scrolls from the Torah in your tefillin, don't make it 5. Okay. In your lulav and etrog, the 4 species, don't make a 5th species. Don't add that to it on Sukkot. Fine. And then he says, or reciting 4 blessings instead of 3 for the blessing of the Kohanim. And this one I found very curious. Right? I understand why, the lulav and etrog are the arba minim that the Torah tells us to put. We put in these 4 species. I understand why there's 4 specific scrolls that go into the tefillin, but why would Rashi warn us against adding blessings? This Cohanic blessing they're talking about, you may be familiar with. It's the traditional blessing that we give to children on Friday nights. We recite it over wedding couples, and we do it at bar and bat mitzvah. We recite this blessing that actually comes from the previous book of the Torah, from Bamidbar, in chapter 6. It says, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Lord bless and protect you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Right? May God turn his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And may the Lord lift his countenance up to you and grant you peace. I mean, those are nice blessings, but why not add a 4th blessing? Why would you ever restrict someone from adding blessing, right? That just doesn't seem logical. Of course, we want to add blessing in the world. It's what we do. It's what God told us to do, right? When God met Abraham, he said, you will be a blessing. Like, that is our job as the Jewish people. But in this case, you don't add 1 more blessing. So I was curious why. And I found 2 answers that are connected, right? And which relate to our previous question, which is, how do people get so misaligned with what God wants us to do in God's name, and how can we avoid that? So the first one comes from Maimonides. In the Mishnah Torah of the Rambam, right? Maimonides is the Rambam. He has a section about how to properly make the priestly blessing. And he says, do not wonder What good will come from the blessing of this simple person? Right, so what's he asking? In a previous congregation of mine, we said, we should start duchening. We should start having the Kohanim, when we do a repetition of the Amidah, get up and they put their towels over their head and they take the priestly stance and they make this blessing over the congregation. And so we suggested it. And in the ritual committee, you know what the people said to me? They said, I don't want to do this. So why not? It's a beautiful, ceremony to show the channeling of God's blessing. They said, have you met some of the Kohanim in this congregation? I don't want that guy blessing me. I don't want that guy blessing me. I was stunned. It never occurred to me. But they were basically saying the question that Rambam says here. What good will come from a blessing of this simple person, right? Like, I know this guy. I don't care if he's a Kohen. He's no better than I am, and I don't want to get a blessing from him, right? So Rambam says, no, don't think that way. He says, for the reception of the blessing is not dependent on the priest, but the Holy One. As it states, and they shall set my name upon the children of Israel, and I shall bless them. The priests perform the mitzvah with which they were commanded, and God, in God's mercies, will bless Israel as God desires. Right? So what's the Rambam saying? He's saying, right, why don't we add to the blessing? Because it's not our blessing to add to. Right? When we get up and we give that blessing, it is not that we are so powerful that we should bring the blessing into the world. No, it's a channeling of God's blessings. Right? This is a warning about pride. Right? When we think the blessing comes from us, that is us being proud. When we fail to recognize that we are merely conduits of a blessing that comes from a much greater source, when we add to the blessings from our own pride, we might add bad blessings, right? That's how you get off the path that God wants us to be on. That's how in God's name you can start doing such awful things. Because instead of doing things, recognizing that you're doing things on behalf of God, we start to think in this scenario that we are doing things because we are God, that we somehow are holier than everybody else, and we are the source of the blessings. No. It's something especially important to me as a rabbi. I try and remind myself often, right? I am not a source of blessing in the world. I try and do mitzvahs. I try and stay on God's path so that people can benefit from God's holiness, from God's sacredness. But, I laugh every once in a while, someone, usually not a Jewish person, but still will say like, oh, well, as a man of God, blah, blah, blah. I'll say, I'm not a man of God. I'm not a man of God any more than you're a man of God. I mean, we all have the same creator, and that creator is God. But I'm just a man. God is God. And it's up to all of us to figure out how we want to be a conduit for God's holiness in this world. That's our purpose. That's our mission. So one way that we learn from this threefold blessing that we can end up off the path is to be prideful. But then we might think that we should, maybe we just shouldn't do anything at all then. Maybe we shouldn't try so hard to bring holiness into the world. What if we make mistakes? What if we, draw a line and it's the wrong line? So I want to bring another teaching about this threefold blessing. This is from the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar says, he looks at the blessing, very interesting, not so much from what we get. Usually we look at the blessing and we say like, yeah, great. I'm going to get blessing and protection. I'm going to get, grace and kindness, and I'm going to get peace. Awesome. He says, no. You're looking at the blessing wrong. He says, the way to look at the blessing is from status in the blessing. He says, at first, the Holy Blessed One is calling Israel daughter, and then sister, and then mother, right? All female, because Israel, in this case, is referred to as in the feminine. So what does he mean, daughter, sister, mother? It says, for the whole blessing is all about illustrating status. For at the beginning, God calls her daughter, for it seems like a father having status over his daughter, with him above and her lower. As such, it says, God bless and protect you. It follows from the language of protection, because all guarding, right, happens from above. We guard from above, and he has a pasuk he brings that proves that. As you lay down, we will guard over you, right? So if God is blessing and protecting us, then that's God being above and we being below, like a father protecting his daughter. So that's the first part of the blessing. The second part, though, God calls her sister, as if they are on the same level, saying, God, turn his countenance to you. right? So to you, in standing face to face. Now, the Kli Yakar is a problem. What are you saying? That the Jewish people is equal to God? That doesn't work. So he goes on, he says, in standing face to face, as the moon receives the light from the sun, standing opposite it, right? So like the holiness still comes from God, but we are a partner in that relationship and reflecting that. That's the second part of the blessing, right? We've moved up a level. But then the really mind-blowing one, he says, and after that, God calls her mother, with status over the daughter. As the eyes of the daughter are lifted up to the mother, God says, Yisa Adonai panav elecha, right? May God lift up his countenance to you, right? So to speak, right? So looking up. Now, how can we interpret this? How can we possibly say that God is the lower in this relationship and God is looking up to us? The Kli Yakar would not be saying that, right? That's a terrible statement of pride. We'd be back in the Rambam. So what's this third step? Well, maybe it's not that God is looking up to us, but maybe it's that we are standing on God's shoulders so that we can achieve greatness according to God's will, according to humility, not pride. Right? That's what this blessing is about. And when we do our basic mitzvahs and check off the boxes, we're like the daughter. We take our guidance from God and we walk the path. When we delve deeper to try and figure out what those mitzvot are all about, what the values are that underlie them, and infuse those values into our lives, well, then we go up a notch and we become partners with God in bringing this holiness into the world, right? And then we can even get further, right? When we stand on the shoulders of God and God's wisdom, right, we can reach even higher as God's tools in this world, right? The point is, it's not that we can't achieve great things. We must achieve great things. As a Jewish people, it is our mission to bring ethics and morality into the world, to fix the world, to do tikkun olam. That is a great purpose and mission. But we have to remember, it's God's path we follow. When we think we know the best way to do that, now we're in pride. Now we are adding blessings, as Rashi put it. When we recognize in humility that any greatness we achieve, any great thing we are able to bring into this world, we do only because we stand on the shoulders of God. That is the kind of greatness we are supposed to bring in the world. The blessings of God that God gives us to share. That's what it's all about. That's what being Jewish is all about. Greatness through humility. Greatness through humility. As we start through the month of Elul this past Shabbat, when I gave this drush, it was the Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? The first day, or the first day of celebrating the month of Elul. And now we're a few days into it. I think it's as good a time as any to take a little reflection and say, am I on God's path? Am I out there on my own, adrift? Or are the things I'm trying to do and bring into the world, the very good things, are they anchored in divine wisdom, in Torah, in the things that make my neshama sing, so that I know that, this, my spirit, my soul inside me, so that I know that I'm on the holy path God meant me to be, and I'm not way out ahead of it. And we do that reflection as we prepare for Rosh Hashanah, as we prepare for the year ahead. We will enter it better ready to do tshuva, better ready to get on that path that God intends for us. May we all find our way back to that path, and Chodesh Tov, have a meaningful month of Elul, leading to very meaningful and effective days of awe. Yamim Naraim. Shabbat Shalom.